All right, let's dive in. We're about to go on this really fascinating journey, starting with a concept that's so simple it can barely make a decision. And from there, we're going to build it up, piece by piece, into a system so complex it can actually see the world.
You know, it all really starts with a question you've probably asked yourself. How in the world does your phone, or any app for that matter, instantly find every single picture of a cat you've ever taken? It feels a little bit like magic, right? Well, the answer is this incredible story of evolution, not biological, but computational.
So to understand that magic, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. We need to start with the humble, fundamental building block of this entire thing, the single artificial neuron. This is square one.
Now, this idea, it's not new at all. I mean, we're talking way back in 1943, researchers came up with a simplified model inspired by, the actual neurons in our brains. That led to something called the perceptron in the 50s, and believe it or not, this core concept is still the beating heart of even the most advanced networks we have today.
So, what does one of these things actually do? Honestly, it's surprisingly simple. It just takes in a few pieces of information, it multiplies each one by a weight to figure out how important it is, adds them all up, and then it makes a single yes or no decision. That's it. It just decides if that total sum crosses a certain line, a threshold. It's basically a tiny little decision maker.
And this really shows you both the power and the weakness of a single neuron. It is fantastic at drawing one straight line to divide two groups. If your problem can be solved with just one line, you're golden. But what happens when it can't?
And that right there brings us to the first major roadblock on our journey. See, very few interesting problems in the real world are that simple. We pretty quickly run into situations where just one line, well, it isn't going to cut it.
This is the classic example. It's called the XOR problem. Just look at the image. You can see two distinct groups of data points, right? Now, try to draw a single straight line to separate them. It's impossible. No matter how you try, it can't be done. So our simple little tool, the single neuron, is completely stumped. This was a huge problem for early AI research. So, what do you do when one decision maker can't solve the problem? Well, you form a committee. And that is exactly what the next big breakthrough did. Enter the multi-layer perceptron.
The genius innovation here was adding what's called a hidden layer right in the middle. So instead of inputs going straight to an output, they now go to this intermediate layer of neurons first. And that single change, it was absolutely revolutionary.
You see, by stacking these layers, the network can do something incredible. Each neuron in that first hidden layer, it draws its own simple line. But then, the neurons in the next layer combine the results of all those simple lines to create much more complex shapes. This is what allows the network to finally draw the squiggly, nonlinear boundaries it needs to solve problems like XOR.
And this is where things get both really powerful and a little mysterious. Those hidden layers, they actually learn to find useful features all on their own, without us ever telling them what to look for. And this immense power is why these networks are often called black boxes. We know they work, but digging in and understanding how they're working, that's a whole other challenge.
Okay, so we've solved the XOR problem. We can tackle complex patterns. What's the next logical step? Let's try to teach our network to see. And this is where our powerful new tool, the MLP, runs headfirst into a massive wall.
Take a look at this number, 12,288. What is that? Well, that's the number of inputs from just one tiny 64 by 64 pixel color image. I mean, think about it. Every single pixel has a red, a green, and a blue value. Each one is a separate input. All of a sudden, you're dealing with over 12,000 inputs for a single, small picture. The complexity has just completely skyrocketed.
And the MLP's core design becomes its biggest weakness here. It connects every single one of those 12,288 inputs to every single neuron in that first hidden layer. That's computationally massive. But even worse, it completely ignores the fact that it's an image. A pixel's neighbors are really important, but to the MLP, it's all just one long, jumbled-up list of numbers.
So we needed a new kind of architecture, one that was designed specifically for grid-like data like images. And the inspiration? It didn't come from math. It came from biology. So let's meet the hero of computer vision, the Convolutional Neural Network, or CNN. Researchers looked at how animal brains process vision, and they found something pretty remarkable. The neurons in our visual cortex, they don't look at the whole world at once. Nope, each one has a small receptive field,
which just means it only pays attention to a tiny little patch of what the eye sees. And CNNs were built to copy that exact idea.
And this leads to a completely different way of thinking. An MLP learns global patterns, right? It treats all pixels as equally important. A CNN, on the other hand, learns local patterns. It focuses on the relationships between pixels that are close to each other. It doesn't just see pixels, it sees the structure between them.
This whole approach is built on three really brilliant ideas. First, sparse interactions. Each neuron only connects to a small local patch of the image. Simple enough. Second, parameter sharing. Instead of learning a brand new edge detector for every single part of the image, it just learns one and slides it across the whole picture. This is insanely efficient. And finally, that leads to equivariance, which is a fancy word that just means if the cat moves to a different spot, the network's internal cat detector also moves with it.
And what this does is allow the network to build a hierarchy of vision. It's amazing. The first layers, they don't see cats, they see really simple things like diagonal lines, little gradients of color and curves. Then the next layers combine those into textures and corners and simple shapes. And finally, the top layers assemble those shapes into the complex things we recognize, like eyes and ears and whiskers. Suddenly, it sees a cat's face.
So after this whole journey, what's the big takeaway? It's really that in the world of neural networks, evolution is all about finding the right tool for the job. Each one of these architectures is like a specialized instrument.
This table pretty much sums up our whole story. We started with the single neuron, a simple, linear decision maker. We evolved to the MLP, which uses those fully connected layers to learn complex relationships in more general data. And finally, we arrived at the CNN, which uses these specialized tricks to learn a whole hierarchy of local patterns, making it the undisputed champion for grid-like data like images.
And that's really the whole narrative, isn't it? It's this beautiful chain of problem and then solution. The single neuron couldn't handle nonlinear data, so the MLP was born. Then the MLP couldn't efficiently deal with the structure of images, so the CNN was inspired by our own biology to solve that.
This whole evolutionary path brought us to the point where, yes, your phone can find a cat in a photo. We have successfully taught machines to see. So the real question now is, what's the next big, complex, structured problem that we should teach them to understand?